After only ever watching the incomplete OVAs that you can find on Netflix, by the way, I decided to finally read the manga itself, The Lost Canvas, an alternate universe prequel to the classic Saint Seiya. The manga series gets much praise from young and older fans, so let's see if that praise is well deserved. The plot is basically the last arc of the original series but expanded. The Great Holy War of Hades and Athena starts now in the 18th century. The main characters here are Tenma, Sasha, Yota, Alone, and Crane. Tenma is your high-spirited, kick-butt yet lovable anime protagonist that believes strongly in the values of friendship. He is the Pegasus Saint and therefore important to the outcome of the Holy War. Tenma shares a bond with Alone and Sasha that can at times make for an interesting banter and conflict in the story. Sasha, the reincarnation of the goddess Athena, is a loving leader to an army of great warriors known as saints. She is kind, warm, and loving personality and treats all those under her like family, which makes the tragedies of war and her battle with her brother all the more interesting. Alone, chosen to be the vessel of Hades due to his purity, he is a kind, fragile soul and talented artist. Traits you will see play a part in the story. Crane, a silver saint and training partner to a gold saint who assists the main character in their journey. She's one of my least favorite characters, honestly. She doesn't have much of a personality and does basically nothing in the latest part of the story. Yota, one of my favorite characters in the series, a fun rival and friend of Tenma. His charming, dickish personality makes watching his character growth very entertaining. Sadly, he becomes less important later in the arc. Now I simply give my overall positives and negatives of this story, starting with positives. If you're a fan of this series, 9 times out of 10 your favorite characters are gold saints. All the main characters could suck a dick, but you could still love the series if the gold saints are handled well. Luckily, the author seems to be an old fan of the series, so they take center stage, and often they are as awesome and powerful as a fan could hope. Not to say other characters falter hard, the series makes great use of Hades' specters more than any in the series. Their battles against even more powerful enemies are the highlight of the manga. The fights are in many ways better paced and clever than the classic. What helps with the combat are 2 things: art and background stories. The art is great, detailed, lively in both background and characters. I personally think when it comes to color, it's the best looking manga in all of the Saint Seiya spin-offs. Characters look simply big and powerful with good expressions to go with their actions. And you have to respect the female artist, not afraid to make the female characters look robust. She gives background to every gold saint and sometimes even villains, and does her best to make the stories deep, interesting, and often a counter to the story of the villain. For the negatives, I'll start with the small things. While the art is great, it can be a little busy with an overuse of shading, making things a bit hard to see. I forgot to mention in positives that the series gives characters new techniques, which is great. However, some of them could have been more creative. An example of a not so great technique is Rising Darkness, a technique where a character creates a star. Now that's hard to fuck up. Creating a star is badass, but all he does is dehydrate the enemy. It tries its best to pass it off as something terrible, but I just look at it and go, drink a Coke and you'll be alright. While the weak specters do feel somewhat important, the Silver Saints sadly never justified their existence in battle, which is a pity. This rank rarely gets highlighted unless they're just overpowered gold saints in silver cloth. Now, the bigger issues. I would say out of all the spin-offs in the series, Lost Canvas uses lore the least of all of them, and the concepts created in this series like nature manipulation doesn't really feel like it adds anything. The main characters, Pegasus, Athena, and Hades alone, while the connection between them adds something, the dialogue between the 3 gets really tired after a while, and by the end I just had enough. Also, while Saints have a background story, some are better than others sadly, and the background stories get formulaic. Life-threatening fight takes place, discussion of past events, villain may or may not give a backstory that relates to the character, the hero counters their point and gets enough inspiration to ultimately defeat the character, the hero dies, rinse and repeat multiple times. Now this is Saint Seiya. If you know the series, it has a very formulaic nature to it. However, the execution can still vary in quality, and the Lost Canvas is good in the beginning, okay in the middle, terrible in the end. I remember near the end when the characters are finally attacking Hades and they encounter a judge, and the judge goes, "Hey, I know you." I literally went, ugh. Not every villain needs some connection to the characters, and by then I was sick of all the flashbacks. It simply slowed the plot down. Not all fights fall under this formula, however. The Sagittarius and Gemini story play out fairly well and different, but the Leo Goat Saint is awful. This character, I know, got a lot of hate for being overpowered apparently, but it's worse than what I heard. Everything about him screams what many would call a Garisu. The dialogue starts as, "He's awesome. Look at how awesome and talented and strong he is." Then you get his backstory about how powerful and awesome his father was, which cultivates in him using the most powerful technique in the series, a technique that needs 3 gold saints to perform. He does it on his own, and does an even more powerful technique that he pulled right out of his ass. This character just sucks. Alright, enough of that. Overall, the story has a strong beginning, an okay middle, and boring on bad final. The reason for this, I believe, is 1. The inexperience of the author. From what I can find, she did not do much before this, and has never worked on a shonen before this. Another is, she likely should have done another reading of the original and made another draft of this story, because overall it just suffers from fundamental mistakes many shonen have. Also, the pacing of the villain. The early part of the story, the saints kill multiple gods. I believe like 7 gods. Yet, when the judges appear, you're supposed to take them seriously. How? In order for them to possibly work, you need to go into detail on why the gods lost, why they're in a weaker state, and really hype up the newer villains. But it simply doesn't do that enough. The series doesn't use Greek mythos that much, which is fine. Neither does the classic. But something I found funny here is that I always say Hades could be replaced with Dracula and not much would change. The ending here basically confirmed that. Anyway, time for the grade. While it seems like I complained for a bit there, I liked the series overall. It disappointed me, but that was only due to fans overhyping it. But I see why it's hyped. The first thing is, the first 1/3 of the manga is covered in the anime, and that's honestly the best part and the part many, if not most, people have seen of the series. Another thing is the great art with a sort of a Naruto modern style of storytelling. In the end, The Lost Canvas is luckily a simple story, easy to follow with good action and good characters with some level of depth. So I give Saint Seiya The Lost Canvas a B-.